What's up, Carlton? Well, I think he was here. He's not here now. Um, Hopefully he'll be back. In the meantime, we do a little and a little bit on the back end as well. Had to give the camera a reach around. uh, but yeah, so as you can see from the title, I'm saying Congress is a hot mess. And congratulations to these assholes. They've just ended the longest government shutdown in US history. 40 days. And that sounds like a song, 40 Days and Nights. I'm thinking of the Tony Braxton song. Something old days, not a word from you. I don't remember the song that well. But anyway, so the government shutdown officially ended 2 hours ago. Congress is a hot mess. It's a gerontocracy. It is a gerontocracy. We should not have people serving in Congress that were around when World War II was going on. I'm just saying, if if a if a Congress member, whether in the Senate or the House, was alive when World War II was still going on, they are too old to be in office. We need not only term limits but age limits. And I know that sounds ageist, but the framers of the U.S. Constitution and the founding fathers, and also the who are also the framers of the U.S. Constitution, never intended for Congress to be a lifelong commitment. That was that was never something that they foresaw members of Congress doing. Now, what they did see Congress being, they intended for Congress to be the most power. Like they always say, separate but equal, the three branches of government. But it was written into the Constitution, and I am getting my pocket Declaration of Independence and U.S. Constitution soon, so I can put it in my EDC sling bag, so I can have it with me wherever I go. Um, but the framers never intended uh, congressional membership to be a lifetime career. Now, arguably, you could say they did so for the Supreme Court. That is a different thing. And that would make sense on the sense of the Supreme Court because um, it gives a sort of stability. And the Supreme Court was supposed to be nonpartisan. It was supposed to be the nonpartisan branch of government that could adjudicate. That's why it's called the judicial branch. They could adjudicate between the executive and the legislative branches. They all have checks and powers on each other, but the framers of the US Constitution intended Congress to be the most powerful branch of government because it's the most direct, or it was supposed to be the most direct, uh, directly relating to the electorate. They they were the most direct representation of the people. The executive government was supposed to be. I mean, at one point they had literally considered making George Washington king, and then they was like, no, we don't want a king. We just got rid of a king. Let's not put in another king. um, but there were no term limits for president originally. It was George Washington himself who set the precedent, saying that we should have no we should have a president should only serve 2 terms, but that was never written into law until the 20th century because everyone keeps talking about Trump and how he was joking about possibly running for a third term. Well, the Constitution stops that because that was an amendment added to the Constitution in the 20th century. But also, first of all, he says it to mock journalists and people who are clutching their pearls because he's that sort of he's that sort of guy. He's gonna if you tell him he shouldn't be doing something, he's gonna say, "Oh well, I'll see about it," just to make liberals and Democrats squirm. And I'm gonna tell you, many of us independents and Republicans kind of enjoy when he does that because we kind of hate you Democrats and liberals for being a bunch of smug hypocrites. Mind you, the longest sitting president in office was a Democrat named um, FDR Roosevelt. Not his cousin, who was also in office before him, Teddy Roosevelt, or Theodore Roosevelt, if you want to be formal about it. Uh, but no, Franklin Delano Roosevelt served 4 times. He died in his fourth term. Look it up. FDR served 4 terms in the White House, but he died within his first year or second year in his fourth term. They start calling him King Roosevelt because he served so long. I mean, he served 13 damn years. um, but no one clutches their pearls. They call Trump a fascist, and at this point, fascist just means anyone who's right of center. If for progressives and liberals, they call anyone a fascist or a Nazi or trying to be like Hitler if they are right of center. And it's been the playbook again since the 80s with Ronald Reagan. Ever since Ronald Reagan, the, they was they would use a smear campaign against any Republican and try to put fear in ethnic minorities that this person is going to put black people back in slavery. He's going to do this and that. Mind you, it was Democrats that were doing some of the most heinous shit to ethnic minorities. Let me get to some of the comments before I go too far. Carlos says Congress is basically a royal family. They're in position for the long run. Yeah, they're an oligarchy. Con- Congress has become an oligarchy as well as a gerontocracy. They're a bunch of old people who are well positioned to serve those roles. And then they redistrict the congressional map so they can get reelected. So wait, so you're a Democrat and there's a bunch of Republicans in your district. Well, we're just going to redraw the map so that we're going to make a zigzag so it goes through all the little areas in your district that have more Democrat leaning households, and vice versa. The Republicans do the same thing. Oh, I got too many Democrats in my district. Well, to ensure that I get reelected, we're just going to make sure we redraw this map up and have my district running through the more Republican leaning households. It's fucked up. um, Purvis, what's up? Carlin says liberals don't mind making Obama king of America. Yeah, like they still consult this man like he's the fucking president. Like man, like shut up, Obama. Like go off into the sunset. I can't stand that tether. And I stopped liking him even before he left office. So this is not some I'm pro Trump now, so I got to be anti Obama. No, I was disliking Obama in his last 2 years of office. So yeah, since 2015. Anyway, Carson says Trump is nothing like the mustache man. I try not to say his name for YouTube purposes. Yeah, I know I shouldn't say it as much either. I just said it one time, but I'm just gonna use like a one off word, like one-off letter or something to refer to him, so I don't get demonetized because YouTube doesn't. You're right. YouTube does not like that. They don't like the N word either. Not nigga. You can say that as much as you want. They don't like the N Nazis. So won't be saying either one of those. You get demonetized if you say those too much. But anyway, they keep calling the man a fascist, like conveniently forgetting Trump was originally a Democrat. I'll say that again. He was originally a Democrat, a moderate Democrat from New York City. That whole thing with the Central Park Five, that was when he was a Democrat. So when they keep saying he was racist, blah blah blah, mind you, that was when he was a Democrat, and even still, black people still loved him back then. First of all, there was a lot of people, even though the kids were exonerated, there's a lot of people who still believed that they were guilty. And these, not just, and I'm not talking just about racist white people, I'm talking about there were black and Latino people who thought the same thing. There was, I mean, because at the time it seemed pretty cut and dry what happened. It wasn't as cut as dry as initially reported, but that's what happens when you have shoddy journalism. But in any case, he was a Democrat when he did the Central Park Five uh, editorial in the Washington. I mean, sorry, in the New York in in the newspaper at the time, and then or the New York Post, and I mean not the New York Post. You guys know what paper I'm talking about. Um, on top of that, all these people who hate him now used to love him. He and Whoopi were good friends. Whoopi dogs the shit out of him on The View, but they used to be buddies. The Clintons hate him, but guess who was invited to Chelsea Clinton's wedding? Trump. Guess who also gave campaign money to the Clintons? Trump. Both, when Bill was running for office and when Hillary ran for Senate. He gave both to Democrats and Republicans, but he gave to Democrats and he was a registered Democrat. And people loved his show, The Apprentice. He was on Oprah Winfrey. Oprah Winfrey was telling him, "You should run for office one day." And people, if you guys doubt anything I'm saying, you can look this right up here on YouTube. You can look at when he and Whoopi Goldberg were hugging each other and all, friendly towards each other. You can find the clip of him on Oprah Winfrey show with her telling him he should run for office one day. You can also clip the time where he sequestered a private jet for Nelson Mandela to come to America when he was released from prison in South Africa. He chartered, now he didn't do it free, but still he did charter a private jet for Nelson Mandela to come to America after he was free from South Africa. Yeah, sounds like a real racist there. Not no, not he also donated heavily to the campaign of Jesse Jackson when he ran for president back in the early 80s. Real real racist there. When Jennifer, whatever her name is, the black singer slash actress and now talk show host, when her family was stranded out in New Orleans, guess who put them in his hotel for free? Trump. Uh, there was a black woman who, and she's reporting on this. No one famous, mind you. It's easy to say, well, these are celebrities, so he's just looking for other celebrities. There was a woman he didn't know. Again, you can find this on YouTube if you don't believe me. She was no one famous. He just saw her crying one day, asked her what's wrong, and she told him about what was going on wrong in her life. He handed her some money and was telling her, "Don't worry." He said things won't always, be so bad or whatever, whatever. And he, so people, say, "Oh, he's just narcissistic." First of all, if you don't call him narcissistic, we're gonna play the fairness maxim here. Given the fairness maxim, pretty much anyone who thinks that much of themselves that they can be president of the United States is going to have a smidge of narcissism. You have to have a smidge of narcissism to think you, of all people, of out of 330 million people, you are the one who can run the entire nation and basically be the leader of the free world. That takes a smidge of narcissism. I don't care who you are. So we're gonna play the fairness maximum with that one. But aside from the narcissism, the dude is not. If he is racist in his private life, uh, it's not consistent. On top of that, people often say, "Well, look how his real estate. He denied some black people, you know, to the ability to rent or own properties from him." Let's be clear: a lot of people in real estate are going to be prejudiced because when it comes to their money, you're going to be very, how do I put it? You are going to be very conservative in whom you're with, and with whom you're going to deal when it comes to selling and renting properties. Period. So I don't want to just talk about Trump. I want to get back to Congress. I'm just kind of seasoning this. Put the little salt bay, salt bay. I just want to pepper this thing up a little bit. But calling him a fascist is, like I said, is become meaningless. It's sort of like using the term racist nowadays. It's becoming meaningless because when you cry wolf too many times, when Peter cries wolf, no one cares anymore. When you call racism on anything just because you don't like what a white person is doing, it rings hollow. When you call someone a fascist just because you don't like conservative virtues, it starts to ring hollow. If you wanted to call someone fascist, I could see George W. Bush. The Patriot Act was over the top. And it was, and this is why we had talk of that in The Dark Knight Rises. Again, for people who don't realize, the Dark Knight trilogy was a way of Christopher Nolan kind of talking about the time we were on, the time we were in the early 2000s, dealing with terrorism and the aftermath of terrorism, which was like the Patriot Act and stuff like that. So the Dark Knight Joker was a stand-in for the threat of terrorism that we were feeling at the time. The Dark Knight Rises, the Harvey Dent Act, was obviously an analogy to the Patriot Act. How it went too far. It did, like they were saying, it cleaned up the streets, but innocent people were getting put away as a result. And it was based, and the Harvey Dent Act was based on a lie, sort of like the Patriot Act was based on a lie that we needed to go invade Iraq in 2003 because they had weapons of mass destruction, um, or that we went into Afghanistan to 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 capture to punish and capture the people who are responsible for 9/11. But the Taliban weren't the ones who funded the fucking thing. It was a bunch of people. It was a bunch of Saudi Arabians who the Bush administration protected. Osama bin Laden was a member of a prominent family, the Bin Ladens, which were friends of, guess who? The Bush family. This is not conspiracy. This is well documented. the, the the Afghanistan thing should have been the shortest of the three wars that were going on. We had three wars based on one terrorist attack. Well, it was three terrorist strikes in one event. You know, the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and the plane that was shot down. Well, I'm sorry, it wasn't shot down. It crashed. But I've had friends in the Pentagon at the time tell me it was shot down. I'm going to believe them. Just saying. But anyway, whether you want to believe it was shot down or it crashed because the people fought back against the terrorists, you can say whatever. But it was three planned attacks that because that third plane was headed towards the White House. Just like that one hit the Pentagon, the other one was planned to hit the White House, which again makes sense why it was fucking shot down out of the air. Just saying. But anyway, based off that, so this is why I laugh at when people are talking about Israel's going too far. Israel's been in like 5 fucking wars and 3 intifadas, and you're talking about they're going too far. We had one terrorist attack event in which 3 different separate happenings within that event, and we started 3 wars in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and the war on terror in general. The, the Afghanistan war lasted 20 years. 20 years and only ended because Biden was willing to do a half-ass pullout of the Afghanistan. His pullout of Afghanistan was a guy who was going raw and said he's going to pull out before he nuts, and then he nuts as he's pulling out. That was how Biden pulled out of Afghanistan. He was nutting as he came out. There's no pause. um, Causes says Trump was in movies, TV, and name dropped in rap songs every other day. Exactly. Rappers loved him. A lot of them still love him, to be honest. A lot of them voted for him. um, Carlin says when Trump was a Democrat, people did not bring up his business practices. Exactly. People aren't racist until no one has a problem with you when you're on their team. Once you're not on their team, then they're gonna bring up all your flaws. And I've heard this is what they do to people in Hollywood, um, particularly men and black men in particular. Like as long as you're on that team, they don't care. But you step out of line, you decide you don't want to wear this dress in this movie. You don't want to suck the producer's dick. Now all of a sudden they're gonna bring up, oh well, he sexually harassed these people. He has a drug problem. You know, his real name is such and such, and he used to be locked up. Like all this, like they'll bring up all the stuff that was all under wraps till he decided not to do what they wanted to do. But we're gonna talk about Hollywood on another day. Um, but yeah, so again, the Dark Knight trilogy was a reflection of the threat of terrorism and its aftermath of the 2000s. Just another great reason that people should watch the trilogy. Um, but off of that, basically what I was alleging to is that if you were going to call, if there was merit to calling someone a fascist, it would have been Bush. And even then, I wouldn't have called him a fascist. I would have said what he was doing was proto-fascism. Like the Patriot Act was gone too far. And most of the things we hate now that we assign to Trump started either with the Bush or the Clintons, or even as far back as Reagan and some other characters. Um, my problem, though, is that became part of the Democratic playbook since Reagan was calling every Republican candidate a fascist. And again, 40 years later, it just doesn't it it only works among the it only works among the anointed, as Thomas Sowell will call them, the anointed, the liberal intelligent. When he says the anointed, he's talking about the liberal intelligentsia. If you are outside of the anointed, then a lot of the stuff, a lot of the stuff that the Democratic playbook uses doesn't work that much anymore. If you're an independent or you're conservative, libertarian, you're just completely politically apathetic, um, like I am, or you're, and I'm like, and you might be a combination of these things. Also, classical liberal, um, or moderate. Majority of America is moderate. The majority of America is moderate. They may be left on more. They may tend to be more left on some issues, or more right on some issues, but overall, most people are moderate in America. As a classical liberal, uh, I'm more of a moderate. Like sometimes I would just say I'm a moderate instead of trying to explain to people when I say classical liberal that I don't mean the same as American liberalism. Classical liberal is more in line with the European thinkers of the Enlightenment and the Age of Reason. Um, like I said, I would have been an American liberal back in the '90s, in the early '90s, but the liberal of the early '90s is considered a moderate or conservative by today's standards. So be it. I'm a classical liberal is now politically on the right. I'll own that. But basically, I'm still the same liberal from 1995. the I haven't changed. The political the, the the political landscape has changed. People on the left have pushed more farther to the left. Albeit, Harnesses, I agree. Most people are moderate. Yeah. And speaking of which, talking about moderates, I want to say this before I forget to say it. Just before I get lost in the sauce with all this other stuff, I'm gonna talk when I'm as I shit talk about the Congress. I want to say to folks, I know it's only you and I watching this, Carlton, and maybe one other person, but I want to say this: social media is not doing you a favor. Whatever you like is going to feed you more of it, which feeds your biases. Because more than likely, you're going to get your political news and other things from social media, whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, here on YouTube, on TikTok, maybe Snapchat as well, a Twitch. I'm going to say this because this is something that I do. Every once in a while, watch something that is not within your normal sphere of things that you care about, or watch something from a different news source that you typically would not watch. This is why I think I'm more well rounded now than I was uh, 6 years ago, because all the stuff that I was told was gave misinformation or disinformation or was wicked or evil. I watch that stuff now, like Newsmax, Fox News, the the Blaze, Daily Wire, um, Sky News Australia, um, and some other things. But then I'll still check out occasionally stuff from CNN or Young Turks. Um, though very rarely with the Young Turks because they are so fucking annoying. I can't. The Young Turks and MSNBC. No, well, I don't know which I dislike more, Young Turks or MSNBC. I used to be a faithful watcher of the Young Turks. I used to watch them every day. I can't stand them. Now every day I'll watch instead Rising on the Hill during the weekday because it gives you a progressive and a conservative. Well, he's more of a libertarian, Robbie, uh, whatever his name is. Although he's recently come out as gay and left his wife and now he's married to a man, but whatever. That's his personal life. Um, um, which is wild, but still, um, they will have a back and forth between the two of them, and that's more balanced. You get to see a progressive and a conservative duke it out, but on a friendly, in a more friendly manner, and it gives you a better look at the news. But again, I would say this: fuck up your time, fuck up your news feed on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook. Watch something that you wouldn't normally watch, and check out a channel or a page that you normally wouldn't. So if you're on the left and you prefer MSNBC, CNN, Young Turks, um, what's some other ones? I mean, there's plenty of them. PBS NewsHour, I watch them every once in a while. Watch something from Fox News or Newsmax or The Blaze or Daily Wire or anything else coming from the right, just to fuck up just to fuck up the algorithm. If you periodically watch something that you wouldn't normally be interested in, then the algorithm can't keep feeding you the same BS to put you in a bubble. If you only watch the stuff you're interested in, that's all the algorithm is going to feed you, and it's going to put you in an information bubble. And this is what's misinfo this is what causes misinformation. It's not because you only it's not because you prefer CNN. It's not because you prefer Fox, right? It's because if you watch CNN regularly or if you watch Fox News regularly, they're going to feed you more stuff that's just like that content. And that's going to put you in an information bubble, which leads to you being misinformed on a lot of stuff because there's stuff that both sides don't cover. And then there's stuff that both cover, but with different views. On top of that, there's more views just between conservative and liberal. There's there's like I said, you have progressive, you have libertarian, you have classical liberal, you have anarchists, you have socialists, you have totalitarians, you have white nationalists, all this sort of stuff. All I'm saying is fuck up the algorithm by sometimes watching or picking up or looking at an article that you normally wouldn't. If the algorithm can't predict what you like, it's not going to keep force feeding you the same sort of stuff that will lead you to being misinformed. So that is my tip of the day. Fuck up your algorithm by watching stuff that you normally wouldn't watch or or liking something that you wouldn't normally like on Instagram or Facebook just to fuck up the algorithm. That way it can't force feed you the same drivel every time, making you misinformed. Because these fucking nerd billionaires who are fucking autistic, and yes, I'm talking about Elon Musk and I'm talking about Mark Sucker Dick Zuckerberg. I can't fucking hate him. But anyway, these two, all these tech giants, if they're not artistic or on the spectrum, they are fucking socially inept. And they don't give a shit that they are destroying society by having people on their platforms and designing an algorithm that only shows them what they like. Like it kind of makes sense. Yeah, let's create an algorithm that will feed people more of the stuff that they like to keep them more engaged, which means it becomes a technocratic addiction where you will stay glued to your device because it keeps feeding you the stuff that you want to see. So not only is it going to misinform you, but now it's wasting your time. Fuck up the algorithm Watch something that you would not normally watch. Like something that you would not normally like. If you're into sports, watch something on ballet. if if you love if if you are anti-gun, if you're an anti-gun person, you're anti-violence, watch something by Colin Noir or USCC, or something from the USCCA, or from you know I don't know, Sean Ryan or something like that. If you hate what's the podcaster, um what's the big uh podcaster everyone, a lot of people dislike now on the left, watch him. If you don't like him, watch him just once in a while, just to f stuff up. What I'm saying is, if you dislike something passionately, watch it. Not not to change your mind about it. Although I will tell you, it will probably start to make you more moderate in your. You may not stop disliking that thing, but you might come at it with a more nuanced dislike than previously. What Watch something that you dislike, or like something that you normally wouldn't like on Facebook or Instagram. Fuck up your algorithm so that way it can force feed you shit that keeps you in an information bubble, and doesn't waste your time by keeping you addicted to your device by force feeding you more stuff so you can stay on. I mean, it's come to the point where the fucking platform has to tell you, hey, you've been on for quite a while. Do you want to take a rest? You shouldn't need the platform to tell you that. Just saying. Andrew Simple says greetings from Scotland. What's up, Andrew? Carlin says the Democrats lost the recent election because people had liberal agenda fatigue. Yep. He said I like to watch different stuff too. People shouldn't get trapped in an echo chamber or bubble. Yep. That's what I'm saying. The way to get out of the echo chamber is to occasionally watch something that you normally wouldn't watch, or that you pretty much dislike. And that's for both sides. I'm not coming just at Democrats and liberals. I'm talking about conservatives and Republicans as well. If you only watch conservative stuff, watch something completely antithetical to your normal views, no matter what side you're on. Liberals as well. If you're completely antithetical to uh, ultra conservative views, watch something ultra conservative. Now, and I'm not saying go out and watch Nick Fuentes, because I think he's I was about to use the wrong word there. I was about to use the F word. Although I think he is, because he hangs around with Destiny, and Destiny is bisexual. So I think anyone who hangs around with Destiny, knowing that one, he's bisexual, and two, that he's a liberal, when you're a far white nationalist, you're probably fucking him. That's all I'm gonna say. But anyway, getting off of that, I'm not saying go ahead and watch Nick Fuentes. If you have a serious, like, political aversion to someone, don't 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 put yourself in a bit of emotional discomfort watching someone who you hate with a passion, whether that's Nick Fuentes on the right or on the left. If you just hate, like AOC or Bernie Sanders or something, I get it. Like, I'm not saying watch something that you absolutely detest and hate. I'm just saying watch something on that side of the on that side of the political spectrum, just to fuck with the algorithm. Mona says agreed. Fun home experiment. Watch four opposite sided news channels. Notice the lies, agendas, and how they tell the same story four different ways. Notice the sponsors and commercials too. Creepy pasta stuff. Yeah. But back to the actual topic, which is Congress. I just wanted to give that diversion because I thought it was important. Like I said, to keep from being in an echo chamber or in an information bubble. Watch something you wouldn't normally watch, or like something that you wouldn't normally like, just so the algorithm can't predict what you want. So they're gonna just once the it's not that the algorithm is gonna stop suggesting things for you. What is what's going to happen is it's going to be more balance because they won't be able to predict what you like. It's going to give you a little bit more of everything, which is what I get. Like I get on my on my IG feed and in my YouTube feed, I get stuff coming from the left and coming from the right because the algorithm can't predict what do I like more. Do I like more conservative stuff? Do I like more liberal stuff? Who knows? The question the answer is I don't have a preference for either. So now I have a preference on certain views, and it will feed me stuff based on certain on my on particular preferences that I have. Yes. However, again, it doesn't know from what side I take on from what political spectrum I take that view. So I'm just advising you stuff that I already do. Take it for what you will. Anyway, moving on. Melissa, did you ever like Ross Perot or his son? I didn't know his son was politically active. When Ross Perot first ran, I did like him because he was an independent, and I like the fact that he was making Democrats and Republicans very uncomfortable back then in '92. No one took him seriously again in '96 because he dropped out in '92. They was like, well, he might drop out again in '96, so he didn't get the same play. But he could have won in '92 if he stayed consistent. He was wishy washy, which is what tanked his tanked his tanked his votes and people's confidence that he could win the election because he was being wishy washy towards the end. Then when he came back in '96, people just didn't take him seriously. But back in '92, he had a genuine chance. People always say political independents don't have a chance in presidential elections. Ross Perot had a serious chance. He mucked it up. So, oh well. Unless his Congress is posturing right now, right? Like we won't sing this unless Republicans sign this first. And then he says, "Baby shit." I told I something the Karen shut down, or did you read it wrong? I'm not sure what you're saying, but they did end uh, they apparently ended the shutdown 2 hours ago. And like I said, it's been the longest one recorded in U.S. history, 40 days. The last one was again during the first Trump administration back in 2018 to 2019. It lasted from December 2018 to January 2019. That was 35 days. Back then, I didn't care because again, I didn't work for the government. I was working in the private sector doing, doing lead. I was doing lead generation and direct marketing, so it didn't affect me. Plus, it didn't affect flights at the time. But I remember, because people were talking about TSA, and I'm about to watch a video later on about that. But um, I remember the TSA was tripping the last shutdown. That's the only that's what I remember most about the government shutdown. Other than that, it didn't affect me. The government shutdown didn't affect me at all back then. No one was losing their SNAP benefits. um, uh, I think my mom had already retired by then, or no, I think she had either retired or she was just about to retire from Social Security at the time. So so none of us were pretty much too concerned about it. What I remember best was the TSA and showing their you know their dislike of the situation. I remember in a few airports they were playing gangster rap through the intercoms of the airport, and that shit was funny. That was the I think most people forgot about that. If any of you guys remember that, let me know if you remember that the news reports back then talking about how TSA, um, you know, frustrated with the government shutdown and not getting paid, were either like were just refusing to come to work, or the ones that were coming to work were like blasting their music through the intercoms, and it was like sometimes gangster rap music. That shit was funny. When I heard they were playing gangster rap over the airport intercoms, I'm like, oh, I'm so here for this. Now, right now, this government shutdown has been affecting more people. One, because they shut down SNAP benefits. And again, although I can laugh at all these fat women talking about they and their children are going to starve, I'm like, your children are going to starve if you stop eating up all their shit. Like, you shouldn't be 250 pounds complaining about you going to starve. One of my clients I work with as a life coach, she she has ASD. She's autistic spectrum disorder. She also has borderline intellectual functioning, and she deals with other health problems. Guess what? She is gainfully employed and in the US Navy and has a college degree. So I have no fucking cut cards for a bunch of lazy bitches and lazy dudes talking about they need their stamps because they can't work or they don't want to work. When you have a woman who, by every that if you look at all her issues, she should not be a functioning person. And I give her a lot of shit for some of the things that she does. But at the end of the day, she's still a gainfully employed person and served her country in the U.S. Navy and got a whole college degree despite borderline intellectual functioning. Some of you, not some of you folks, but some folks out there have average to above average intelligence and still didn't finish high school. She has below average IQ and finished college, and she's applying for grad school with below. I'm not gonna put out her IQ score, but she's within the range of what's called considered borderline intellectual functioning. And prior to the DSM-5, the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual for Mental Disorders, DSM for short. The newest one is the DSM-5. Before the DSM-5 came out in 2010, what's called borderline intellectual functioning now used to be called borderline mental retardation. So imagine someone at that lower level of intellectual functioning, finishing a whole college degree, and now about to go on to grad school, working full time and in the US Navy, and your fat ass can't even get up to work because you want to keep your SNAP benefits and your WIC and your TCA and your Section 8 and those other welfare programs out there. I have no empathy for them whatsoever. The only people I have feel empathy for are the vast majority of people who are actually on SNAP that they don't talk about, because it's easy to want to get rid of that program when the poster child for SNAP is some fat woman complaining about she don't want to work because she got to take care of her kids, a bunch of bastards she had because she didn't get married and do it the right way. But anyway, she's not actually the majority. The majority of people on SNAP benefits are the elderly and disabled. Most of you have aunties, even even some of you well-to-do folks. You may not you may not uh deal with that side of the family, but I guarantee you have a side of the family that is poor And amongst those poor family members, one of them is on SNAP. If 42 million people were on SNAP, somewhere within 6 degrees of separation, there's someone you know that's on SNAP. 40, mind you, there's 335 million people in the country. 42 million of them are on SNAP out of 335 million people. Within your 6 degrees of separation, there's someone on SNAP. And the majority of them are the elderly and disabled. And even if you, for some heartless reason, didn't care about the elderly and disabled, I get it. What about children? Children shouldn't starve for the mistakes of adults. I don't care what your political leanings are. If you don't, if you are heartless towards children, then it's not. There's there's no corrective towards that. But yeah, so people are feeling this government shutdown with no SNAP, and now even like they had to start canceling flights because they can't pay. They're not paying their traffic controllers. You need air traffic controllers. I wouldn't want to fly in a situation where air traffic controllers are not getting paid. I'm just saying, I wouldn't feel safe. Luckily, these people are professionals and care about their job, but there are literally air traffic controllers who still want to do their job even though they're not getting paid, saying, hey, I can't afford transportation to work. Gas is fucking expensive, guys. And Uber is even more expensive. Doing Uber and Lyft is even more expensive, or taking a taxi. So they had to shut down flights because air traffic controllers are either not deciding not to work or saying they can't get to work because they can't afford it. And the few that are there, I'm pretty sure they're overworked. Do you really want to be in the air with an exhausted air traffic controller? Mm. Now, as far as the federal employees, I'm going to be honest. Outside of the DMV, and I know my friend will be mad at me saying this, but outside of the DMV, most people don't care about federal employees. To be quite honest, and I've told my other friend this as well, who isn't a federal employee, but he's a contractor for the federal government. Outside of the DMV, people don't give a fuck about federal employees. They see them as a bunch of um, overpaid bureaucrats. I'm sorry. The reigning view amongst people in Middle America for these federal employees in the DMV region. DMV means DC, Maryland, and Virginia. Um, a lot of people in Middle America just think that these DMV federal employees are a bunch of overpaid bureaucrats. And I know my friend was telling me, he's like, yeah, but not all of us make a lot of money like that. I was like, yeah, but if you look at the median average, that's about what I'm gonna. I'm just gonna eyeball it and say about 75,000 or 80,000. The that is a lot. Not now within the Washington Beltway. That's not a lot of money. 75,000. But for most of Middle America, that is a lot of money because, again, looking at the median income is about 50, about 51,000 dollars. That is the median income. The median income. It's about $51,000. So someone making 75,000 in a job in which is which seemingly they can't even get fired from unless they come in, shoot everyone there, and smoke crack. It's like no one has very. I'm going to be like again. My heart goes out to my friends who work for the federal government who haven't been paid for 40 days because I know they're struggling. They've told me, um, and I care about them. So I don't want them to think I'm coming at them. But The majority of America does not give a fuck about the DMV federal employees. They think they are a bunch of overpaid bureaucrats. So that's I said so the government shutdown didn't really affect people again until they decided to cut off what SNAP benefits, and now it's also affecting flights. A lot of people need don't fly just a lot of people don't fly just for recreational purposes. A lot of people have to fly for business purposes. So it's affecting business. It's affecting people being able to feed themselves. Meanwhile, Congress is still getting paid during the shutdown. My last month they worked 15 out of 90 days of the current congressional session. 15 of the 90 days they worked, but got paid for all of that. And then, and wait till I didn't even get into Nancy Pelosi yet, that bitch. But you have some of them complaining that they still don't make enough. Mind you, they make over 200,000 a year. That's not even including like what they, their campaign, the campaign contributions and yada yada yada. They said if you don't want us to do to deal in investments and stuff like that, then pay us more. So you want the taxpayer to pay you more when most of the Congress is already an oligarchy, as I've alleged earlier, where whereby most of the people who run for office are already wealthy because they're the only ones who can afford to run a campaign. And so you got a bunch of wealthy people already making 200,000 a year talking about they need to get paid more if you don't want them to do what could be considered insider trading. So I'm gonna get to Nancy Pelosi shortly after I get through some comments. But the fact that they are still getting paid during the shutdown and that they're still collecting taxes, it's like you could fund SNAP. Like two federal judges ordered Trump last week to still fund the SNAP, the SNAP benefits, so that people won't lose their benefits. And so he just decided to partially fund the program for the food stamps out of the federal emergency funds. But literally, the government still has the money because they haven't stopped collecting taxes. The shutdown is a farce because essential services are still running within the government. Congress is still getting paid. The president and his administration are still getting paid. The judicial branch, the the judges, they're still getting paid. They're still collecting taxes. So how is there a dearth of funding available? On top of that, they were going to use emergency funds to pay the military, and the Democrats tried to shut that down too. You want to shut down paying the military? Do you know how they? So, not paying the military is not bright. Military should definitely be considered essential services. Like it literally is. They are responsible for our national defense. National defense and law enforcement are fucking essential services by definition. Because those are usually the two main roles of the fucking of any fucking government whatsoever, is to protect its citizens, uphold the law and defend us from invasion. It doesn't get more essential than that when it comes to the role of government. Anyway, let me get to the comments. So Moonlit says in O'Hare Airport they played hip hop. Um, I died this morning on let this morning on repeats and locked them. They played hip hop. I'm having a hard time translating hip hop music. I'm just gonna say hip hop music this morning on repeats and locked themselves in a room all through Chicago airport. We were flying to Japan. Carlton said and they care about the lives of people taking those flights. Salute to them. Yeah, definitely. Carlton says this is paid vacation time for Congress. Exactly. It's basically paid. It's basically just paid vacation. These people are getting paid and they don't even have to show up. All they can do, all they need to do is come by, go in front of the camera, and say, "This is a damn shame. We want the government to open up. We need the president to do blah blah blah." Or Republicans be like, "Well, we need the Democrats to do blah blah blah." Meanwhile, they're all getting paid. They're all sticking their fingers up each other's asses. Like, it's crazy. And like I said, we need to put not only term, but we need to put not only term limits on Congress, but age limits as well. We don't need a bunch of old fucks in there that don't even understand what they're deliberating on. Like, for instance, these tech giants wouldn't be able to have de facto control of our nation if congressional leaders fucking knew what they were doing and understood what they were doing. It like they only know about it because most and then like for one, most congressional members are are lawyers by trade, so they don't know shit about technology or science. And two, they're too fucking old. Like the average person in Congress is like 60. So and this is no joke. You're gonna think I'm lying, but I remember like 20 years ago, some congressional member, I forgot who, literally asked, and he was dead ass about this, was like, "What is the internet?" He said, "Is that a system of tubes and wires?" Tubes and wires. So how are we gonna expect them to understand the danger that something like TikTok holds, or how Meta's Facebook and IG is fucking with people's mental health when they don't even understand what these platforms are, don't know what the internet is, even though the internet has been around since literally since the 60s with ARPANET. And a lot of young people always pretend like we didn't have, like Gen X folks didn't have internet. We had internet in the 80s, guys. It may not have been the internet that we know as it is stands today because we didn't have the World Wide Web, but we had internet back in the 80s. There was, CompuServe and Prodigy and then AOL. And, people had to use dial up back then. But we had internet back then. We had the Usenet groups, the this, the e-discussion boards, and then people could send email and stuff like that. The movie War Games showed 80s internet. Like, so these fucks have no excuse not to know about it, except that they've been in Congress since Fred Flintstone was driving his car with his feet. Carlos says Pelosi is the investing goat. No, she's the insider trading goat. I'm about to get in her ass pretty soon. Although not literally, because it would fall apart if I tried to fuck her, because it's probably all dust at this point. uh, Melissa Carlton, I promise you, she goes into hiding or gets busted big time for insider trade. She ain't getting busted. She's not getting. She's too big. She ain't nothing happening to her. Her husband is a big. I think he's. I can't remember. He's some sort of stockbroker or venture capitalist. But she always try to get around to saying, well, it's not her stocks, it's her husband's stocks. Like she's not telling him this shit. Like she's not. It was not a coincidence that during the fucking pandemic that all these congressional leaders invested heavily in pharmaceutical companies. That is not a coincidence. I mean, that's not merely a coincidence. That was driven by insider knowledge. You're not going to tell me that during the fucking pandemic that the very companies that developed vaccines for COVID-19, that it was just a mere coincidence that those congressional members happened to invest heavily in those very same companies that put out vaccines for the pandemic. You know, and it's not a conspiracy. Like Sigmund Freud once said, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, which means if if it looks like corruption, it simply is corruption. On top of that, Nancy Pelosi voted to not allow. Uh, sorry, let me get that. Let me say this correctly. She voted uh, against um, stopping congressional members from um, investing in stocks and other securities while they were in office. Why? Because personal reasons, obviously. I'm going to guess that is where I speculate why she voted against it, but it's pretty obvious to most people why she would not be for a congressional bill that would have, if passed into law, prevented congressional members from being able to invest while they're um, in office. So now, after 4,000 years, she's fucking finally retiring. Good riddance to that bitch. People love her within the Democratic Party because uh, she was a huge campaign. Uh, uh, Let me try to say it correctly. Like she could raise a lot of funds for people. She was a huge fundraiser for people's political campaigns. She was the master at that. That's why she was so well loved within the Democratic Party, and why even people who initially disliked her, like AOC, hold her in high regard, because AOC is full of shit too. But everyone holds her in high regard because she was a huge fundraise campaign fundraiser, and that's what how she was able to hold on to Speaker of the House for so long, because people revered her ability to to um to raise to raise funds for their political campaigns. One says, uh, one says I pay close attention as a gemologist to her jewelry, unless gifted to where she cannot afford it. Oh, she can afford it. She, since being in office for nearly 4,000 years, 4 million years. I'm joking, obviously. She was in office for literally almost 40 years, longer than most people have, longer than most, a lot of people have been alive, almost 40 years. Biden was in office longer. He was in office for about 50 years. I mean, from the time he was in the Senate to uh, serving as president, he had been in public office for about 50 years, from the 70s to 2020. Um, but yeah, she served nearly 40 years in office and became 3,000% richer from when she started, when she first held office. So she can afford those gems. She's rich as hell, and you gotta remember her husband is also rich because he's some sort of investment banker or venture capitalist or something like that. So, and that's how she always try to shrugs off her insider trading by just saying, "Well, that's the business that her husband is in. She has nothing to do with it." Yeah, okay. uh, Carter says, according to the White House, the government is still shut down. Well, I mean, we can fact check it. Let's. I mean, let's go on. Let's go on. Let's go on the interwebs. You know, the system of tubes and wires, like that one fucking old ass senator said. But this is literally what I was seeing on the news. So let's fact check it. I don't want to give you guys, misinformation. You guys know I'm pedantic. I prefer my statements to be true, even if it's annoyingly, even if I'm annoying and trying to be accurate as possible, which most pedantic people are accused of being annoying because they want to be accurate. Um, and by the way, shout out to the Philippines. Anyone watching this in the Philippines or will be watching this in the Philippines, I hope all of you are safe from the tropical storms. I know they had a super typhoon last week, and there's a super typhoon that just hit this weekend. Almost 300 people last time I checked have died already. I literally saw, and you this is even on CNN, so you don't have to watch Filipino news. But if you do want to watch Filipino news, there's GMA News or ABS-CBN. But you can find it on CNN. There was like you can see people stranded in places like Cebu and Negros where it's flooding, and they're literally on the top of their houses, stranded. There was a girl stranded, and it was scary. Like she's sitting there on a piece of her house, sitting on the top of the house, and this wasn't a shanty. Like these were houses with like actual like roofs, like roofing, not like some of those shanties that some of the poorer people in the Philippines have. Like they have these informal housing settlements, which are just shanties, or or we might call them huts or shacks or whatever. But these were actual like houses, and the water came up nearly to the freaking roof. She's sitting there on the ledge, and a car smacks against the house right where she's at, almost hitting her. And this is on CNN. I'm like, wow. So, um, you know, I oh update with Micah. I have got in touch with her. She is in. She lives in Negros, and unfortunately, she lost the place where she was at. She was in uh, a housing. She was in a shared housing with other people, and that place was destroyed. She did make it to an evacuation center, and we helped send her some money. But if anyone wants to donate, you can send it to me on Cash App, just $ just a contrarian, or you can send it to me here on YouTube through super chat or super thanks, and that money will get to her because she did literally lose everything. She showed me pictures. Um, it's not looking good, but she did make it to evacuation center, so everything's good for her right now. Um, we sent her some money, but I can only do so much because I'm poor and I have a wife of my own to take care of. So yeah, but if anyone wants to contribute, you can send me a super chat or super thanks that will go to her or to other folks who need it. Meanwhile, I am still looking up the reports on the government shutdown ending. I just want to confirm or I should say, double confirm that I'm not making this up. So I'm looking up government shutdown news, so I don't bias it by saying government shutdown ends, because you know how search engines work. Whatever you plug in is going to find you that thing, even if it's not factually correct. So you got to be careful how you enter something in the search engine, or again, it's going to bias you towards the stuff that they think it wants you want to see. So if you say government shutdown not ends, then it's going to show you articles saying the government shutdown didn't end. Then if you say government shutdown ended, then it's going to show you stuff showing that the government shutdown ended. So I just put in government shutdown news. So this is 39 minutes ago on ABC News. It says government shutdown update. Senate vote marks step towards ending federal shutdown. CBS News 8 minutes ago. Senate approves key step to end government shutdown. Uh, and these are all similar. One says tentative deal to end the government shutdown. Mind you, the stuff I saw was from 2 hours ago saying it ended. So, um, I think what okay, so I think how it was reported, like well, that was like 3 hours ago now, or almost 4 hours ago. I think how it was reported then was the fact that the Senate held a rare Sunday session aimed at ending the shutdown. And I think that's how it got initially reported that they were ending the shutdown because Senate was holding us, or weekends because the Senate and the House do not aren't typically running on the weekend. So they came in on a weekend to try to end the shutdown again, and then you got to view this through a little bit of healthy cynicism too. This is a little bit of political theater because they could have done this during the week. Why do you wait till Saturday and Sunday to do this? You could have done this on Friday. You could have done this on Thursday. You wait till Saturday and Sunday because of the optics. It looks like, oh, we're coming in to try to end this shutdown. You could have done this shit 2 days ago. So again, you gotta always view these things with a little bit of with a healthy dose of skepticism and cynicism because them coming in on the weekend on a weekend session to try to end the shutdown is political theater. They could have done this during the weekday. They could have done this last week. It's political theater, and this is the stuff that I detest, and this is why so many people are politically apathetic who are knowledgeable about government and politics. This is why so many people in political journalism are apathetic about politics because they see through all this bullshit. But as like I said, as it stands now, it seems like there is a tentative deal to end it. Let me actually read one of these articles so we can get a little bit more clear about it. Um, I said we can look at ABC News, CBS News, NPR, Baltimore Sun, Fox News, New York Times. mm, uh, let's go with NPR. So put on the immersive reader. Okay, so it says a bipartisan group of Senate Democrats and Republicans reached a deal to reopen the government after the longest shutdown in U.S. history, voting on the first procedural step on the measure. The agreement would fund the government through January 30th and include full year funding for a trio of appropriation bills, including full funding for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, through September 30th, 2026, or the end of the fiscal year. The vote late on Sunday was 60-40, with 7 Democrats and 1 independent joining with most Republicans to advance the measure. Mind you, that means you almost all of the Republicans were for it, and only a few Democrats were for this. So again, when you want to know who to blame, because we can't always play the both sidism thing. Some when it comes to some issues or political events, it is a both sidism sort of type of thing. But looking at this, and from how people in the general population are looking at it, a lot more people are blaming the Democrats than the Republicans. And people are going to remember that during the midterms. Now, I know I always say that people have short term memory when it comes to politics, but the midterms are only next year. People will remember who hurt their pockets next year. They will still have memory of that. And most people, if you randomly ask people, are blaming the Democrats, including people who are registered Democrats and liberals themselves, are blaming the Democrats. Let's continue. Um, it marked the first but crucial step towards passing the measure in the Senate. Once the bill cleared the 60 votes needed to overcome a filibuster, any remaining Senate votes need just a simple majority. However, the legislation still needs to pass the House before the shutdown would end, enabling air traffic controllers and other federal workers to get paid and federal food benefits to resume, among other things. Senate Democrats had earlier voted against more than a dozen short term spending measures in their fight to preserve healthcare subsidies. But as the pain of shutdown continued to bite, some agreed to more modest changes in the latest framework. And remember what I said the last in my last live. I said in order to compromise in politics, both sides have to be willing to lose on something. Democrats weren't willing to lose on anything because since they've been seeing their butts be kicked politically by the Trump administration for a year now, they feel that their only card to play is basically the shutdown. This is why they've been so obstinate about it, because they realize that holding the holding the nation, at knife point towards their neck is really the only leverage they have against the Republicans and the Trump administration. So they were willing for all of you guys to suffer to gain some political leverage. So just remember that during when you come to vote for the midterms. Let me continue. The continuing resolution to fund the government until the end of January would also include language to reverse any reductions in force of federal employees that happen during the shutdown, as well as protections against further such layoffs through the end of the fiscal year, and back pay for all federal employees during the shutdown. I have long said that to earn my vote, we need to be on a path toward fixing Republicans' healthcare mess and to protect the federal workforce, Senator Tim Kaine said in its statement. This deal guarantees a vote to extend Affordable Care Act premium tax credits, which Republicans weren't willing to do. The agreement to reopen the government is also expected to include a Senate vote on health care by the second week of December on a bill of Democrats' choosing. That informal deal is not part of the legislative text. Democrats are deeply divided about the compromise measure, which was opposed by Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. He needs to get the fuck out too, along with Nancy. Like, seriously. I think it's a terrible mistake, Senator Elizabeth Warren said of the deal. The American people want us to stand and fight for healthcare. No, they don't, Elizabeth Warren. You fake Native American. the the American people want the government running. The American people want the government running. You guys are holding out for these subsidies for health care. Anyway, it says Democratic divisions over legislation. Several top Democrats in the House also vowed to vote against the bill. Again, so when you're looking for people to blame, don't say both sides. Now we can say initially both sides were at fault, but who's the one still holding the knife to everyone's neck? Proverbially speaking, of course, the Democrats. Just remember that. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries panned the agreement in a statement before the Senate vote. We will not support spending legislation advanced by Senate Republicans that fails to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, Jeffrey said in a statement. We will fight the GOP bill in the House of Representatives, where Mike Johnson will be compelled to end the 7 week Republican taxpayer funded vacation. You guys are enjoying the same fucking taxpayer funded vacation, so stop the bullshit. Anyway, I'll continue. And Democrat Representative Greg Kaiser, I think that's how you say his name, of Texas, called the deal a quote unquote betrayal and a quote unquote capitulation because it doesn't reduce healthcare costs. The House has not held a vote since September 19th and previously passed a government funding measure without Democratic support. The Senate deal on government funding comes after Democrats cruised to a series of electoral victories in the last week, giving some of the party newfound political confidence and to continue to fight for health care extensions. Many Democrats believed that keeping the government shut down gave them their only leverage, legislative leverage, with Republicans still in Congress of still in control of Congress and the White House. Guys, did I not literally just say that 2 minutes ago? Mind you, I did not read this article prior to this to this live stream. Did I not say that? Did I literally not say that Democrats are basically using the shutdown as political as their only political leverage against Republicans and the Trump administration? Did I not? Did, so when you guys think I'm just talking shit and speculating, just mind you, I know what I'm talking about. I know a little something something. Just anyway, I'll finish this article. Moderate Democrats defended their votes, with some telling reporters that it's the best deal they could do. Kane, one of the Democrats who voted for the measure on Sunday, defended his support, saying Democrats will be able to put important healthcare legislation up for a vote. Lawmakers know their constituents expect them to vote for it, and if they don't, they could very well be replaced at the ballot box by someone who will, he said in a statement. Again, what did I say? People remember this during the midterms. Guys, who's your boy? Who's your boy? All right. Anyway, so let me get to the comments. One says war games, LOL. Yeah, I was talking about that earlier. He said in international waters we define st- st- what we define still playing war games weekly. Um, Melissa says I'm very happy this morning. I just heard you a year ago and thought you said she's cute. She's okay. She's a real bitch and like a real bitch behind the podium. I was like, no, she is the Antichrist. Mm. Um, Carlson says Pelosi will help her nephew Gavin out too. Are they actually related, or you just making a joke? I actually don't know if they're actually related. One says 40,000 behind a podium. She's corrupt evil. Uh, Carlson said that said. One said yes, be safe with the flood and a recent earthquake as well. A typhoon coming. Please give your thoughts to the Philippines for real. It is a super typhoon, not just a typhoon. It's a super typhoon because they get hit with typhoons all the time between October and December. That is their tropical storm season. But having two back-to-back super typhoons is deadly. And like I said, almost 300 people died already, and this new storm has just landed. So we don't know what sort of wreck it's going to do on our already struggling folks. And it's the people in these low-lying areas and who live in these informal housing settlements, particularly in places like the Visayas, which is like the middle region of the Philippines, which is where Micah lives, and in the lower parts, which is Mindanao. It hits parts of Luzon too. A lot of people in Luzon were affected, but in the the lowland areas. Luckily, you know, my wife and my in-laws, our house is on a higher uh is in a higher land region. It's and there's often jokes that people make who live in these higher regions about people living in the low lying regions. You know, I'm pretty sure they probably make those Star Wars jokes about Anakin, I got the high ground or something like that. It's not, and I'm not making fun of people suffering. Don't think I'm making fun. But, you know, being that we live in one of the higher level regions in Tarlac than people in uh what which my wife was on, she could tell me. And what's that region where her family lives? It's a place I was supposed to be going years ago to visit her family. It's like in the mountains, so pretty safe. So they don't worry about flooding and the storms and all that sort of stuff. The landslides and all that crazy mess. Um, but yeah, the people in the higher sea levels um, tend to be less concerned about the storms than the people who habitually live in the regions that get flooded and wrecked by the storms. So anyway, Mona says wild shit. Carmen says I wouldn't be surprised if the government doesn't open until next year. Um, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised either. Like I said, it could literally go on until sometime until 2026. And like I said, the longer people go without SNAP benefits, um, the more desperate you're going to see people. You already see people threatening mass looting, and and there's been reports of people robbing people as they go grocery shopping. Obviously, they're not going to pick the big burly guy. The guy who looks like he can scrap. They're gonna go. They're gonna pick. They're gonna pick out. They're gonna pick on elderly people, single women, and weak looking. Weaker men. I don't fit the profile of either three, so they know fuck with me. You're gonna get your cat peeled. I have no problem ending someone's life whatsoever. Like my friend and I, he was saying for a lot of people it would be difficult to take someone's life in self-defense. I was like, yeah, not for me. It's not just because I was in the army, that's part of it, but it's also just because I don't feel any moral compunction against someone who threatens my life or safety. Fuck them. um Carden says the pre-stock markets are reacting positively to the emergency meeting, but expect a sell-off if a deal is not made by the end of Monday. Yeah, I do imagine stocks are going to show a rise tomorrow by you know by the time the markets open up at 9 a.m. And I know you can look at the pre-stock market stuff going on, but I don't really go by that stuff. I'd rather just look at it the market when the stock market is actually open at 9 a.m. For it to be more accurate, because things can fluctuate so much between during the pre market hours. So, but you're right. Akara says people will remember this time, but their Trump derangement syndrome will kick in when they vote. Like I said, I didn't want like last year. I did not want to acknowledge that Trump derangement syndrome is a real thing. What I would say is just, and even still, I don't want to use that term because it's too easy to be abused. What I will say, patent there is just a patent hatred of him that is irrational, to the point that people will be literally against anything that he does, even if it's the stuff that they wanted him to do. Like literally anything. Like if people said they wanted to end world hunger, if he ended world hunger, they would still hate him for it. Like, oh, he must have some agenda. He ain't really in world hunger. That's just a lie. Like, it doesn't matter. He's been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, as he and his administration has been working to end, like, I think five conflicts across the world, including currently the Israel the Israel Hamas war, and he's still trying to work something out with between Ukraine and Russia. I'm pretty like, look, no matter what he does, they will hate him for it again, even if he does the very things they want. If he said, if he decided, I'm gonna make abortions legal across the board everywhere for anyone in the states, they would still hate him. I don't want an abortion just because if I'm not getting an abortion that Trump did. Like this is like if people don't think it's real, like this literally happened during the pandemic. People don't remember the vaccine came out while Trump was still in office. It came out while he was still in office. And what did Democrats and liberals say back then? They were saying, I'm not going to take that vaccine. I don't trust it. Mind you, he did not make the he didn't make the fucking vaccine. So it didn't make sense. It was headed by Anthony Fauci. Like he was in charge both during the Trump administration and during the Biden administration. So Trump only made sure that the vaccines came out as quickly as possible to prevent people from dying. And when it came out, people said, "I don't trust it. I'm not taking it." Because then, as soon as Biden came in office, these were the very fucking same vaccines, and all the Democrats, liberals, were like, "You need to take it. You need to take 2 shots, 3 shots, 4 shots." It was the same exact vaccine they said they weren't going to take when Trump was in office. So this is the patent irrationality that makes people who have some political uh, knowledge apathetic about the general electorate. Carl says, "Yep." He said Pelosi and Newsom are related through marriage. Oh, okay, I didn't actually know that. Thank you. That's something I genuinely didn't know. Again, this is why I say it's an oligarchy. You have an oligarchy of old people and people who are connected through family and business ties, which is nepotism and cronyism. This crony capitalism. So when older people look, most older people are dislike socialism. If you're Gen X, if you're a baby boomer, if you're a silent generation, most of us grew up to hate socialism because we grew up in the era of the Cold War. Millennials and Gen Z did not grow up in the era of the Cold War. Well, maybe the earliest millennials did because they were born from like 81 to 96. So the millennials born in the 80s, know a smidget about the Cold War. Uh, but if you're a millennial that was born after 1990, no, because that's when the Berlin Wall came down, right? Socialism is attractive to people who didn't know the depths of depravity that came out of the Cold War. They didn't know about the the Great Revolution in China, about people like Pol Pot, uh, you know, and many other examples I could just name off. But if you don't want to make socialism attractive to young people, stop allowing crony capitalism. Crony capitalism is what fuels people's interest in socialism. Crony capitalism. We see crony capitalism in politics. We see crony capitalism in business. And it makes people think, well, the only way we can get a fair shake is if we have the government own the means of production. Now, here's the thing: you don't. There's two ways in which the government can take control of things, which is not just socialism, but there's also state capitalism. State capitalism is just when the you still have private enterprise, but the government gets the final say on what goes on in those businesses. This is sort of what China is at, where China is at today. They're not communists in the sense that they were under Mao Zedong and the Great Cultural Revolution or whatever. They are more state capitalism. They have they have um they have a market economy, and they do they do have uh, they do have a market economy. They do have private enterprise, but the government is involved in all of it. You and Trump has been doing some state capitalism as well. So think because people think I never criticize him. You know, in several different companies, he's um, he's had the government take um, some shareholdings in these companies. I'm sure some of you can name off a few, but um, that's state capitalism, where you can still have a market economy and private enterprise as opposed to a centrally planned economy and a government controlled industries. But in a state capitalism, the government gets the final say on decisions within private enterprise and in the market. So the government will regulate the market, and well, the government always has some regulation of the market. Let's be clear. It's never been like a pure laissez-faire market that I know of. But they will, I will say, so I will say they will heavily regulate the market, and they will take active, uh, they will make active executive decisions within private companies. Um, that's bad. um, but people are more willing to put up with that in place of crony capitalism. Crony capitalism turns people when people when the only capitalism people grown up knowing is crony capitalism, it makes them think that all capitalism is bad. Same thing as when people like immigrants typically migrate from socialist countries like Venezuela or Cuba or Russia, and they become these like strong free market conservatives because they've seen the other side of it. They've seen the extreme. So they're all, as far as they care, they would prefer pure laissez-faire capitalism over socialism because they've seen the worst that socialism can offer you, which typically turns into either a failed a failed a failed country or fall into some sort of authoritarianism. So socialism. So in other words, if you don't want people, even people of their middle years like myself, to favor democratic socialism and elect more people like Mondani, stop waving big. Tell wealthy people to stop waving their big money dicks in everyone's face. The more wealthy people wave their big money dicks in everyone's face, the more people, especially younger people, are going to favor socialist policies. So, if that makes sense. Um, but I'm about to go, yeah. It's 1 o'clock. I didn't know it was so late. I have more thoughts on this, but I, I don't want to go into like I don't want to go late into the wee hours talking about this. We can keep the we can keep this going in the comment section, especially for the folks who are watching this on replay, so you never got a chance to interact with us here in the chat room. And again, I will be taking donations for Micah, my friend in the Philippines who lives in the Mindanao region of the Philippines, which is the southern part of the region, and Negros, who's lost everything. And again, for people who know, this isn't the first time she lost everything. Like, unfortunately, these these she lives in these lower income places, which are frequently destroyed by natural disasters like typhoons and landslides and earthquakes, because not they live in poorly constructed housing, these shanties, and so they will often lose everything, sometimes even lose lives in these regions, and then have to keep starting over again and again, and until they leave those places, it's going to keep happening to them. Now, it would be glib to say, well, they should just move, but again, with what money, and to where would they go? So, mind you, this happens here in America. When we talk about these people living in the Mississippi Delta region, they know these places are subject to flooding every freaking year, and it's kind of glib of us who live, on the on the coast, whether on the East Coast or on the West Coast, to be glib and say, why don't they just move out of them little podunk areas and around the Mississippi River Delta? Because they can't afford to go anywhere else. So, because I was once like that, like 20 years ago, I was pretty glib. I was a smug little liberal latte sipping. I still sip my lattes, by the way. I don't give a fuck. But I was a little latte sipping, East Coast college educated liberal, uh, saying, why don't they just move out of them little fucking areas in the Mississippi Delta region? Why don't they just not live in these little shitty parts of New Orleans, because they don't have anywhere else to go? And it's like, I've seen my own financial struggles throughout the years. I know that that's not. It's easy to tell someone just go do better without actually offering them actual ways to do so or the resources to do so. So, um, our thoughts and prayers to Micah, and if you want to contribute to her, whether in a super thanks, if you're watching this on replay, you will see that button on your screen. You can give anything that you want. I'll I'll be more than happy to give to her. Or if you just want to give to me to help me with my channel, grow the channel, please do so as well. And although I haven't said this in a while because my Streamlabs normally handles it for me, please like, subscribe, and share the videos with people you know. If you want to give a contribution, you can, to help me grow the channel, or if you want to give it to Micah, whichever. Just let me know whether it's for me or for Micah. Okay. Um, and you can become a member. Members get certain perks. You get I have certain stuff behind the paywall that only members can see. And the members who sign up to the highest membership level um will be um will be extended an invitation to go live with me. So there you go. Um and I am still trying to work on making it to 10,000. I was That was my goal for 2026, was to make it to 10,000 members. It still is. And as I said, once I hit 10,000 members, one of the things I will do, which I decided by votes in my on my YouTube wall, is that when I reach 10,000, I will teach you guys the Bruce Lee 1 inch power punch. For some of you watching don't know, I am a martial arts coach with 30 plus years of experience in John Fanjit Kondo, Muay Thai, uh, boxing, that's Western boxing, um, Penchat Salat, Filipino martial arts, for a little bit of also judo and taekwondo. and French savate, um, and some other things, but too minor to really list off. But if you want a private training, virtual training with me, let me know. And I mean, I have an email on my descriptions that you can reach out to me, or you can reach out to me on my IG page, or you can tip me at buymeacoffee.com and buy me a coffee. And you can also leave me messages there as well. So, whatever you choose to do, thank you. Have a good one. And Congress sucks. They need term limits, they need age limits. It's a gerontocracy, it's an oligarchy, and they are reinforced by crony capitalism. So, there you go. Have a good one. And ding dong, the witch is dead. Nancy Pelosi retired. See you guys later.